Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to one of our In Conversation videos. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Golden from Brandigo in Shanghai. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. So happy to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you. And, how's things in Shanghai?
Great. It's getting a little bit hot here, but besides that, it's lots of activity on the ground and lots of things happening with the Chinese economy. I think positive things. So it's super excited to be here.
Cool, cool. Well, if you can send some of the heat this way, it'll be much appreciated because in Northern Europe we're having a dismal summer at the moment. But
I know.
all due to the Gulf Stream. But hey ho. Anyway, so Mike, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for becoming a mission partner. We really appreciate that. I like to start these conversations, which really are about your agency, by asking if you could tell us a little bit about Brandigo, what you do, the types of services that you offer, because I think you're pretty unique in the market, and especially given the heritage. But I'll let you explain because you'll do it far better than I can.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So Brandigo is an agency that I founded, 20 years ago, actually this year. So it's been
Wow.
going for a while. We're not huge. We're kind of a small, medium-sized agency, but we do service large clients for the most part. So we work with multinationals such as Maersk, Henkel, a lot of European companies like that. That's on the B2B side. So about 70% of our business is B2B oriented. And then the other 30% is consumer oriented. And our main client on that side is Costco. So,
Okay.
and for Costco, for example, our services, we are a full service agency. So we're doing everything from their social media, which here in China means WeChat or Little Red Book and things because everything's blocked, as I think most everyone knows. So all of the Chinese social media channels, we do content creation in Chinese for them. And then we also do, let's say, demand generation or lead generation campaigns for some of our B2B customers. And then a little bit of public relations still as well, which was our original mandate, let's say 20 years ago, but we've evolved quite a lot since then. So those are our main services. For new entries into the China market, we also do kind of a basic setup. So for example, doing the Chinese brand naming, we have a process for that because that's very important here in China. Your website, your client's website might not work in China, so we can replicate that and set that up here or in Hong Kong in simplified Chinese. And then also looking at, let's say, the messaging or your position in your market and doing some qualitative research around that to support your entry into China or your client's entry. So quite a pretty wide range of services for our size, I would say. And
Mm.
then part of that focused on the early stage people entering China, and then the second part focusing on companies that are here and helping them grow or get their message out.
It's because I think we tend to forget a little bit, especially in Europe, where sort of the translation, transcreation element, whilst important, is an easier function to go from English to French to German to French or whatever it happens to be. But of course, in China, it's a much bigger thing when a brand enters the market, a westernized brand enters the market, isn't it? Because you often have to go through a whole new process of what are those brand values and how do you translate them for the Chinese market, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. We just did one for an overseas client that's doing the kind of fitted shoe, and their existing translations basically no one understood what it was all about. So we just went back. We had a few interviews with them. We looked at the market and their competitors, and then we came up with a new positioning statement and messaging that actually made sense to their customers.
Cool. And obviously, you're not Chinese. So how did you end up in China?
I don't know what gave that away, but anyway,
Yeah,
that's
I've
right.
done this for a few years. I'm quite good at picking these things up.
It's my accent, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from the U.S. I'm from Maine originally, and I took a long road here. Originally, I was a Japanese studies major in college, which kind of dates me, I guess. So there's not much to do with that except go to Japan. So I went to Japan, ended up working in marketing in-house for about 4 years for a company doing software business. My time in Japan, I would say I had a wonderful time, but decided it was time to go somewhere else. Went back to the US, did my MBA, and then decided I didn't want to stay in the US and work for a big tech company during the kind of big boom for the tech boom. A buddy who said, "Hey, how about go to mainland China and let's go figure something out?" So that was in 2002. I came, looked around. It was early, I would say. Um, we started one thing. I started a magazine, which, if anyone's done publishing or magazines, that's not an easy thing to do. It
Oh,
looks really fun. And we did 6 issues and pulled the plug on that. And then from that, we said, hey, we could start an agency. There seems to be a hole in the market for, let's say, a foreign, non-Chinese managed, smaller agency that can work with a wide range of people and be a little bit more nimble than, let's say, a large agency. So that's how it all got started. And then it's been 21 years here in China, and the agency's been going for 20 years.
so you really were ahead of the curve, I guess, because I remember when everyone was starting to talk about the sort of the BRIC nations, and I guess that was what the sort of mid 2000s, probably edging towards 2010, wasn't it? Probably more. So
Yeah,
you were there way ahead of them in that case.
yeah, it really started to modernize here. I would say around 2010, they had this big
Mm.
the World Expo here in Shanghai, and they really redid parts of the city. But it's been an amazing journey here in Shanghai, and Chinese people are amazing. I think the view of China these days, kind of from the West, is quite tilted. But if you're on the ground day to day here, people want to have a great life and do good work, and in general, they're really great people. So it's been a great journey here for me.
Yeah, no, I have been to China a few times, and I have a sort of similar experience. What you necessarily see in the media in other parts of the world is not a true reflection of the day to day in China. I would definitely concur to that. I mean, leading on from there, I mean, China as a nation has changed dramatically, and you'd have been there obviously for probably the big part of the most recent change over the last 20 years or so. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly in my experience, the creative industry in China, I mean, it's still relatively young compared to other parts of the world. How is it structured? How is it sort of segmented? Where is it sort of based? Could you give us a little bit of background from your experience on how it works?
Sure. So let's say 20 years ago when we came, all of the big players were in the south, in Guangdong or Canton, that area, and they were mostly coming from Hong Kong. So you would have Hong Kong creative directors coming over, and Hong Kong was well developed, of course, and they would be, let's say, managing or being the creative directors for the big agencies here, and they were mostly in the south. Then they kind of moved up to Shanghai. So Shanghai, I would say now is the center for agencies because it is the commercial center um, for China, I would say. But you've got every large player here and all forms of their agencies. So you've got a WPP building down the street from me that has like 40 agencies in there.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's massive. It's their campus there. You've really got everyone here. There has been some consolidation. But through this growth of the last 20, 25 years, this massive middle class has grown, and they like to spend money. They like to have good stuff. So there's been a great opportunity for marketing, advertising agencies over all these years. That said, you never see that many creative awards going to China. A lot of the campaigns feel derivative or not super original. But that's part. I think the clients here have so much power that even if the agency is super creative, and I think everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about, the client doesn't want to do that. They feel safer, let's say, to get an influencer or a celebrity and to have a less interesting campaign. So
Mm.
on the creative side, you're not looking at crazy creative, I would say here, but there's a lot of money in marketing, and trying to get that a piece of that as a smaller agency is always our challenge. And you do have a lot of smaller digital agencies that are small Chinese run boutique agencies or even kind of mid-sized agencies. So the competition is intense. So we compete sometimes against the big boys, small guys, everyone in between, and then someone's cousin gets the job. So it's never easy here. I know that worldwide it's hard to get clients these days, but I think, like I said earlier, that China's coming back and the economy feels like it's starting to resurface after those few years of COVID when things got really shut down for a while.
Yeah, because you were really locked down in certain parts of the world, weren't you?
Yeah, we had let's say a 3-month very hard lockdown where
Yeah.
we really, I couldn't leave the apartment complex. They had built a corrugated aluminum gate around our entire complex, which is a big complex, like 30 buildings, and you're just stuck in there, really stuck. And some people had it a lot worse off than we did, where they couldn't leave their apartment for months. So you're seeing some people sometimes kind of a PTSD left over from COVID time. But everyone now is like, let's move on. Let's not talk about it anymore, and let's just get things back on the road.
Yeah, and I'm curious because in some markets that where we operate, there's quite a traditional delineation between the types of agency that you can get. I.e., the market is of size, which of course China is, to accommodate business to business agency specialists, B2C specialists, people who work with governments and things like that. And some markets which are of equal size, the agencies tend to be a bit of a, well, we'll do everything because why wouldn't we? Um, how does it fall in China? Do you see specialist niches by vertical, or is it sort of a more of an homogeneity of service offering?
I think it's the latter. So I think, except for luxury goods, I think there's people doing a bit of everything, to be honest.
Yeah.
And part of that is, we tried to differentiate at one point. We said, look, let's go to B2B direction, B2B, and focus on, to B clients. And then Costco fell in our lap. So I was like, did you look at our website? I guess not. And of course we took it, and I had to develop kind of a bit more of a consumery arm to deal with them. But it's a bit more like that, where people find someone they like to work with, and then they just try to feed them with stuff. It seems to be more like the way it works here. So it's hard because we do want to differentiate and, find our pillars and just go for that. But sometimes it's just harder here in some way.
Yeah. Okay. And anytime you talk to an agency leader or owner, one of the biggest headaches, bugbears they have, of course, is talent retention and acquisition. And I remember a few years ago when I was in China, the talent market was ferocious, with people leaving agencies, joining agencies. I mean, it was just incredible. I was blown away by it. Is it still the same? Is there a talent issue, or have things calmed down now, or was this just a sort of microcosm that I happened to experience?
It's definitely hard, and it's also expensive. I think something our agency friends in Europe or the US don't understand is that we're probably paying, I would say, kind of European wages,
Okay.
and our rent here is probably like a US rent for our small office. It's pretty expensive to run things, and then you do have a real fight for talent.
Mm.
It's better in some respects, and I think Chinese realize that working for that big agency or that big company isn't all that's cracked up to be. And working in a smaller agency where you've got direct access to the boss and we're doing real hands-on training with you has its advantages. So I think that's come around, but you'll see people's resumes where they've been in the market for 3-4 years and they've worked at 10 different places, or every
Wow.
year they rotate. And I'm not going to hire you because you're just going to stay for a year and move on. So it is ferocious, as you say.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's interesting you would talk about cost, because I've had this discussion numerous times with clients and other agency colleagues. China is not an inexpensive place in so many ways, and it's a misconception to believe that it is. And I think the other thing that people get slightly blown away by is the scale. So, I mean, when we tend to think of things from a European perspective, perhaps as a mid-sized agency being about 30 people, but of course in China and indeed the US, it's a significantly larger operation to be mid-sized, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Um, you'll run into friends and they have hundreds of people, and that's mid-sized. So something like that.
Big operation, big operation. I mean,
Yeah.
um, just moving on a little bit, and because you're one of your specialisms, of course, is helping uh, non-Chinese brands enter the Chinese market and resonate with customer bases in a way that makes sense and gathers traction, et cetera, et cetera. Um, for anybody watching this video that has a client potentially or an interest in entering the Chinese market, are there any sort of top line watchouts, without obviously giving away all your IP, that an agency might want to consider, or a brand might want to consider as they go towards sort of thinking about entering the Chinese market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm an open book. It's fine. You guys can ask anything, anytime. But a few things that people don't really think about that much, but looking at your brand name in Chinese is important, because if you don't have one, no one's going to know how to say your name. Even if they read English, they're going to have trouble with it. And then they might start using their own version of your name. And then you've got kind of a pirate version of your name floating around. So we had, I think, Galerie Lafayette, they had 3 or 4 names, and they had a different name in Taiwan, different name in mainland. And it was all just because the media just gave them a name, because they hadn't really gone through the process and registered anything. So it's important that to get the right Chinese name, which is something we do, and then also to make sure it's trademarked properly before doing anything. So don't come to the market without trademarking everything and making sure that you're protected legally. That's really important. And then to look at, even just through simple kind of qualitative research, to really understand about your target audience, and understand if you have target persona in the West or somewhere else, how to adapt that to China. And if you have to adapt your messaging, your website, your products, all that stuff, you have to go to market with a simplified Chinese website for mainland. Having something in English will never cut it here anymore. And then to follow that route, you've got your website going, then to add in the correct social media to support that. Because everything's blocked here, it's usually WeChat. You're a B2B kind of business. If you're a consumer kind of business, it might be WeChat. It might be Little Red Book, which is called Xiaohongshu. It might be Weibo, probably not. That's kind of going out of style. It might be TikTok or Douyin, which is the local version of TikTok, which is a separate version from the Western one. So you really have to look at these channels and understand which channels are going to be important for your market, and not to waste your budget on all of them, because it's impossible, but to find the right ones and then focus on those. And then creating content for those that might be part global, part local, some mix of those two things, and finding that right mix. So those are some key things. Yeah.
Yes, good stuff there. And actually, just to come to the sort of digital side of things, I mean, again, I'm always quite astounded how advanced China is, and I know it's a sort of a slightly walled garden in many ways, but actually the sort of digital social media ecosystem that exists there, and the interaction between that and e-commerce is quite incredible. Is that a challenge in your experience for a lot of westernized or non-Chinese brands and agencies to get their heads around? And is it an opportunity that's unexploited in your opinion, or where does it sit? How difficult is it to get involved and get your head around? I guess is the first part of the question.
The hard thing is when our clients who are abroad don't have WeChat or any of the things, and we're just talking about it. It's like talking to someone is like radio announcing like a football match or something. You're trying to explain what's happening, and they're looking at you like you're crazy, basically. Like, you can't put a link inside the WeChat post unless you have a verified account. To do that, you need a service account. There's all these layers of intricacy. But at the end of the day, it's still marketing. So there are all these little things that you can and can't do, and not legally. It might just be the platform isn't working the way it's working, like Facebook is working or Google's working. So you need to be patient about that stuff. You also need to be patient when you go to register, let's say, a Baidu account. Baidu is the equivalent of Google, and you want to have an AdWord account so people can do pay-per-click. It all looks like Google in the way it works, but when you're registering it, they come at you with different questions and different requirements, and you have to send them your trademark form and your corporate certification, all this stuff. So you've got little barriers that are not difficult, but require some patience. That said, at the end of the day, like I said, it's still marketing. And if you have marketing fundamentals and follow those, you'll be fine here. So that's my view of it.
But which really, I guess, is part of the reason you guys exist in the first place, is to help steer people through and find that path that will enable them to do what they want to do. So, I mean, I guess just to sort of round up here, I mean, is there, I mean, this is purely from interest, but is there a sort of Chinese brand that you really admire that you don't work with that you'd love to work with? And if so, what is it and why?
There's some cool Chinese brands. I mean, I think Europe is about to block half of them or impose
Probably
tariffs on them. But
more than likely.
um, yeah, yeah. I really like, and we didn't work too much with EVs or anything like that, but I really like DJI. Those are the guys who make the drones, actually. And that's a fantastic technology that they've got in beautiful consumer products. So I think they're already expanding all over the place. But there's some great technology brands coming out of China, including the EVs. I mean, say what you will about how they were subsidized, and for sure that's part of it. But they developed very quickly very good EVs. So it's pretty amazing the technology here sometimes, and the speed at which they're able to develop that. So, working with some of those, if we can bring some Chinese brands out, and you guys can help us, that would be fantastic.
No, I think yeah, that would be wonderful. Just actually, I was going to sort of round up, but what is the, just from a general curiosity point of view, the EV adoption rate in China? Is it relatively high? I mean, I know because we see a lot of the brands we've not registered or seen over here are starting to creep
Yeah.
over here. BYD being a classic example, which is sort of more in the brand consciousness at the moment in the UK at least. But what is the sort of EV situation in China?
I don't know the numbers, but just anecdotally here in
Mm,
Shanghai, it's a lot. It seems high. And one thing is that all of the Uber drivers, of course, it's not Uber, it's DD, which is the local version. They all drive, like 90% drive EV,
yeah.
which is amazing. So you've got, a zillion kind of taxis going around that are EV. So that's pushed part of the adoption. And I think I can see downstairs, like in my parking garage, more and more EV things going on. And I think people really like the idea of it. But they also like, if they're this middle class and going into upwards into the stratosphere, they love luxury cars.
Mm.
I also go downstairs in the parking lot and I see a Porsche and high end Audis, everything just all the way down. I see these wonderful cars. So I mean, the Western brands have to get it going with their EVs a little bit better, and you know get their stuff sorted out with the EVs, because I think here in China the adoption rate will be high.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that for 1 minute. Um, Mike, it's fascinating talking to you, and I love catching up on China. It's such an amazing place, and the sort of vibe, energy, and speed that things develop at are amazing. Um, if any of our viewers and colleagues want to reach out and learn a bit more, I assume it's okay for them to contact you directly if we put your details at the end.
Absolutely, contact me directly. And we're also happy if you'd like to have a little intro on China marketing or your client or something like that. We have presentations that we can do, myself and my colleagues. So we're really happy if you want to learn more about Chinese marketing. Happy to have a call or set up a small little seminar. Always happy to help around that.
Perfect. That's a great offer. Thank you so much. And I sincerely hope some of our partners and colleagues at the mission will take that up. Mike, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. And look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. Cheers.